Greetings, Dr. Wolfula here to present a very important special audio presentation that your ears cannot dare unlisten to. Does that make sense? Oh, it doesn't matter. Listen to this.
Welcome back to the Mad and Macabre podcast, known as someone's favorite movie. I'm coming to you from the pod shack outside beautiful Bay City, Michigan. My name is Randy, and with me is the man they call Tomko. What's up, sir?
Not a whole lot. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Well, it's a stormy evening out. I've got a mixed drink already because I'm not going anywhere. Why not? I'm just sitting here loving life.
And I'm glad you're saying that because I am actually drinking a blood red beer in celebration of these movies we're talking about.
Blood red, huh?
Yes, it is. No, it is Blushing Monk from Founders, and it is very, very, very red.
That's amazing. Does
it's raspberry?
Okay. Does the bottle art have a monk that's blushing?
Oh, if only.
Oh, that's a missed opportunity, Founders. Come on now. We're here to do the second part of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise because, I mean, as it were, we were rambling on for hours and hours, so we decided rather than lump it all together in a big old 18-hour episode, we better just cut it in half. So here's a 9-hour episode for you.
You got to know when to say when, sir.
You really do. You got to know when to tap out. Otherwise, you might break an arm or something. I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that metaphor. Who can tell at this point?
We left off with, what was it? The Next Generation, correct?
Yeah, we're right on the verge of heading into the Platinum Dunes territory. The great big Platinum Dunes era.
When I was going into that section, I was dreading the fuck out of this just because I remember hating these movies when they first came out. And I have to admit that after watching 3 and 4 back to back, it made them feel way more palatable.
I wasn't expecting that.
I mean, it's like I said, the best part about The Next Generation was the fact that you could tell that Matthew McConaughey was having the time of his life, just hamming it up. And I got that same impression from the late, great R. Lee Ermey in these two movies.
Oh, yes.
You could tell he had a lot of fun with that role.
Absolutely.
And on top of that, one of the things that I always look for in movies, characters. Are they relatable? Are they coming from a point of view that I can relate to? And yes, I can in this movie, shockingly enough. And a little bit of trivia, the cinematographer on the remake, at least, was Daniel Pearl, who was the cinematographer on the original one. And say what you will about that movie, it looks really, really good in high def.
Yeah, I agree. I hadn't seen it since it came out in 2003. I actually saw that in the movie theater. And so I barely remembered. Yeah, I barely remembered any of it other than one part, which we'll get to. But first, one last footnote to end the entire OG generation of Texas Chainsaw. In the year 2000, All American Massacre was conceived by Tobe Hooper's son as kind of a tribute to the Chainsaw films that his father made. It was shot on digital video. Good old Bill Moseley came back to play Chop Top. And it basically tells the story of how the Chainsaw family came into being. Buckethead, who you had mentioned before, as a musician friend of Bill Moseley. Yeah, he did the music for the movie. I guess he played Leatherface in some shots. The film's publicist said that All American Massacre would be available for download and online that Halloween, but it never happened. It never happened. You can see some trailers of it, but the full on version of All American Massacre, nowhere to be found. I'm curious, have you ever seen the trailer for this?
I have, and I've also seen footage of Buckethead as Leatherface.
Ooh, that's interesting.
And it's not convincing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
You can tell that he's wearing a fat suit, and he's just kind of sitting in a chair, writhing with the chainsaw. And I don't think this is a lost masterpiece. You know, I think it has the quality of a fan film from that time era, which is to say it's not very good. But just the fact that you have Bill Moseley reprising the role of Chop Top, and you have the contributions of Buckethead, though, that alone makes me want to really watch this movie just so I can finally see it.
Yeah, I agree with that. Looking at the trailer, it's it's apparent that it looks like garbage. Like, it was shot on digital video, but this was the early days of digital video. Doesn't look good at all. It was the early days of digital video, so it looks like shit, really. It doesn't look great. It looks like somebody's, not even B movie, like, we're talking D movie. And like you said, it does look like some sort of fan film. Other than Bill Moseley being in it, you'd be like, what the fuck is this? Although I do admit I'd love to see Buckethead as Leatherface, and it doesn't surprise me that he doesn't look convincing because he's a tall, lanky man, and that should never be Leatherface.
Honestly, I'm not interested in the movie. I'm interested in the story, and I am interested to see what Bill Moseley does with the character.
Sure. Yeah,
that's all I want to see.
I can see that, yeah. One other footnote to close out the OG era. WWF wrestler Corporal Kirchner, after he left the Federation, went to Japan and he wrestled as Leatherface. Yes, he did. And his entrances are something to be seen. He marches out there with chainsaw in hand and swings it out, swings it around, and does the little chainsaw dance and like throws chairs, and it's probably the best part of any of his matches, I would gather.
Yeah, that was the highlight of any of his matches. But I mean, where it gets interesting is he's the only example I've seen of a wrestler actually being prosecuted and imprisoned for assaulting a fan at a show.
Did he really? As Leatherface?
As Leatherface. And while he was in prison, the promoters said, hey, you know, we've got a great angle with this character. Let's just keep him going. We can put anybody in that mask and the audience isn't going to know the difference.
Right.
And when he finally got out of Japanese prison, he decided to team with the replacement. He was Leatherface, and then there was Leatherface 2. And they had a tag match where I can't remember who exactly the names of the wrestlers they faced were, but one of them was the promoter. And the original Leatherface decided that he was going to go over with the crowd in a bed of nails match, where he broke off a section of the bed of nails and power bombed the promoter onto it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Needless to say, he was fired.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's not an easy wrestling match to watch.
Sure. That sounds interesting enough that I need to track it down.
But I don't know what that guy's up to these days.
Yeah, I don't know either. I became aware of his role as Leatherface because I had an old DVD that I bought that was King of the Death Match, and had a bunch of Japanese matches on it, including the infamous Cactus Jack versus Terry Funk in an exploding barbed wire death match thing. But on the undercard, there was Leatherface, and I swear there was someone dressed up like Jason too.
That is very possible. Because over in Japan, they just decided to have all kinds of horror icons wrestling. They had Jason Voorhees, they had Freddy Krueger, I believe they had Michael Myers. They did not care about intellectual property one bit.
Yeah. If nothing else, you should seek out that Japanese death match with Mick Foley and Terry Funk, because it is insane. And it beats the hell out of the one that EEW had the other day.
Yeah. When you have your two main eventers, one going to the hospital and the other one who should have gone to the hospital because he smelled like burning flesh, that's hardcore. I don't think what else we can talk about with Leatherface. We've covered corn bugs. We've talked about the fan films. Is there anything else that we want to cover before we head into the Platinum Dunes area?
I don't think so. I think that about gets it. I can't. Well, how about this question? Why do you think Leatherface has persevered as a character? Because I would say Freddy, Jason, and Michael are definitely in front of him, but he's right there as a solid 4. Why do you think he's persevered over all the rest?
Honestly, as far as the actual character goes, I think it's just the reputation of that first movie, because it has the reputation of being one of the most intense, gory, visceral movies that has ever been shown on silver screen. And it's the experience that people remember, not necessarily the character. That, and it's just another thing that is linked to Ed Gein. Just like Norman Bates and Hannibal Lecter, James Gumb, and a couple others that I'm sure I'm forgetting. And it's the fact that I think it's the fact that people still think that it's based on a real story.
Yeah, that's true. It's wild to me that these horror characters still remain around. Like you can buy a Funko Pop of Leatherface, despite the fact that the vast majority of their movies are crap. And I would dare say that most people haven't seen most of these movies.
I think that's fair.
Like, I mean, everyone knows who Freddy Krueger is.
I just think it's kind of weird. Well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole other discussion. I remember Freddy Krueger when he was contemporary, and anytime you see characters that are known for being psychotic, murderous monsters, and they're being sold as cute action figures to children, kind of makes me wonder what the hell is wrong with our society.
Yeah, at a certain point, Freddy Krueger was basically Bugs Bunny. He was,
and he started out as a murdering child molester.
Yeah, then he became just a lovable, wisecracking pop culture icon for some reason. I remember my aunt for my birthday one year bought me a Freddy Krueger head, and you put your hand in it and squeeze the ball on the inside. It was a squirt gun, so you would fill his fedora with water, and when you press the ball, the water would come out of his mouth like he was spitting on you.
That is kind of messed up. First of all, the fact that your aunt bought that for you. Second, the fact that you're fisting Freddy's head.
Right.
Just kind of disturbing.
Yeah, but it looked really cool. I wonder if that's still around in my parents' attic or something. That'd be great to have.
If not, I guarantee you could find it on eBay really quickly.
Probably. But would I want to pay that price? That's the ultimate question.
Why wouldn't you, sir?
Well, I guess you're right. I've spent money on dumber things.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, let's get to the Platinum Dunes era. Here we go. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the remake, 2003.
Again, way better than I expect. I remember hating it, and maybe my expectations were driven so low by those last two movies that I just kind of liked it by comparison. But I kind of had fun with these.
Texas Chainsaw 2003, I liked quite a bit. It's probably the third best movie, I would say.
I would agree. Yeah.
It's surprisingly effective. On December 5th, 2001, a website reported that Michael Bay's, yes, that Michael Bay, created Platinum Dunes and set its sights on remaking Texas Chainsaw Massacre Early reports said that Marilyn Birds would reprise her role as an older Sally Hardesty, recounting the events of the original film, because you just can't get away with that from that original film. And early in the film's production, the original filmmakers, Tobe Hooper and Kim Henkel, were expected to write a script for the film, believe it or not. But that all went by the wayside for whatever reason. Also, initially, Dolph Lundgren was offered the Leatherface role in this movie. Can you imagine that?
Why would they think he would do that?
That's a very good question. Hey, Dolph, you want to wear this mask for, I don't know, the entire fucking movie?
And no one will recognize who the hell you are.
Right. That appeal? That have an appeal for you, buddy?
Oh, good Lord.
Good Lord, indeed. The role settled with Andrew Bryniarski, who was a former bodybuilder, and my God, he played Zangief in that Street Fighter movie.
Coming to a Comic-Con near you.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a double threat right there. He was both Leatherface and Zangief. Woof, geek-gasm.
I remember hating this movie, but I appreciate the fact that they at least did something other than ape the original movie. As much as I like the second one, they did really recreate a lot of things from the original movie. You can't really say that about this one.
No, but it kind of goes off on its own thing right off the bat. It stars Eric Balfour, Andrew Bryniarski as Leatherface, and Jessica Biel's torso.
Her torso and her jigglies.
We were watching this movie. Like I said on the previous episode, this was the first Texas Chainsaw that my girlfriend watched. We watched it earlier last week. And I was like, that poor girl probably ate nothing but veggies and fruits the whole time to be able to fit in that extra small top the whole time. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, I mean, again, say what you will about this movie, they knew their target demographic.
Yeah.
Middle-aged geeks and teenage boys.
I mean, she plays the role well. Hey, girl, hey.
She does.
But, Also, I feel like this was the era where the tight white tank top became a thing. Like, every single female protagonist in movies around this time started wearing those tight white tank tops. The tighter, the better.
Yeah, I mean, it was even in that second Star Wars prequel.
See? And boy, they would invest in the best push-up bras imaginable. And I swear to God, she was instructed, when you run, make sure you give it a little extra leap or a hop. So we see some jiggly parts. Because
again, I have to applaud them for being ballsy enough to not make the same movie again and again and again. But I don't know if different is enough to say that, yes, this is a good movie as much as it's an enjoyable movie. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's definitely a good time. Like, if it's one of those movies where if you were flipping through channels on a Friday night and it was on some cable station, you'd probably stop and watch it for a bit. Whereas I'm not sure you would go and actively seek it out, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I would say that this is the first movie that commits the cardinal sin when it comes to the character of Leatherface, in that you don't need to know his backstory. You don't need to know why he is the way he is. You don't need to see his face. Sometimes the unknown is a lot creepier than having everything laid out in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to learn more and more about his origins, because that became a thing. Like, at one point, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo Nest had her own show on fucking Netflix. Who cares? Nobody cares.
Yes, thank you.
Like, geez, even the Stephen King show that was on Hulu, Castle Rock. Annie Wilkes.
With Annie Wilkes, I bailed.
Yeah,
I bailed.
The origin story of Annie Wilkes. No, nobody cares. Nobody cares. We don't need to know the origins of these second and third tier characters. I want to say that Leatherface is a second tier character, but we don't know we don't need to know why he is the way he is. We don't need to see his fucking boyhood. We don't need a Bates Motel.
Sometimes the fact that it's all random makes it scarier.
We don't need to know that underneath the mask he doesn't have a nose and has some weird skin disease. So that's the reason why he wears other people's faces. It's more frightening to know that he does it just because.
Yeah.
Because there's people that...
He just happens to like the flavor of man flesh.
And, maybe it's a tasty treat. Maybe he's got a palate for it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I will say that while the motivations of the characters were interesting and they were fleshed out in comparison to the previous 4 movies, I still didn't really care about them.
Not really. I mean, again, the only character you really care about still is Jessica Biel's character of Erin Hardesty.
Mm-hmm.
She's on a road trip. They went to Mexico because her boyfriend, played by Eric Balfour, and his Goonie friends decided to go to Mexico to score some really awesome weed to sell in the States.
And they didn't do it for kicks and giggles. They did it so that they could build a future off of the profits, which again, it's appreciated, but I don't know. I'm looking at this from 2 points of view. One, these characters aren't that interesting enough for me to get invested, but also they at least tried. Where I can't say they did that in the previous 2 movies.
Yeah.
And really any of the 4 movies, really.
No, you're right. I guess the closest they got was Stretch and her relationship with LG in the second one was the closest.
Yeah, and Lefty, he was motivated for family grievances, but
sure,
it's a mixed bag.
It is. It starts off a lot differently than the first one. Well, there's one similarity. They pick up a hitchhiker, but from there it just goes off the rails. Now, they pick up this girl who's bloody and disturbed and rambling about something that happened, and the people are going the wrong way, and she starts getting freaked out. So she pulls out a gun from her hoo-ha and kills herself in the backseat of the car.
The bloody thighs was... Ugh.
Yeah. And so, of course, the kids are all freaked out. Jessica Biel and co. pull off to the side, and she and her girlfriend are really on board with calling the cops, while the other two... while the 3 guys are like, no, let's get out of here. You're not sure why they're being dicks, but you figure out it's because of the weed mainly.
I have to give credit where credit's due. The shot where you see the 2 people in the front of the van and the camera pans all the way back toward the rear end of the van through the hole in the head of the hitchhiker and out of the hole in the back windshield. That is damn cool shot. That's straight out of Jeff Darrow.
Yeah, that's
from
pretty awesome.
Hard Boiled. That is fucking amazing.
Yeah, that's a good one. Eventually, the cops show up. Well, and it's Arlie Ermy, who most people know from the awesome and amazing movie Full Metal Jacket. He played Sergeant Hartman, and he's no less a hard ass in this movie. That's for sure.
And you know, he was having the time of his goddamn life on this movie.
Yeah. I mean, he had an amazing career. He was a legitimate badass. He was actually a soldier. He was hired on to Full Metal Jacket to be a technical advisor to the movie, but after he's put together some instructional tape, Stanley Kubrick was like, "Oh no, you need to be in this movie." And he actually let Arlie Ermy improv lines and edit his own dialogue in the movie, which was a no-no in most Kubrick movies. And in doing so, he was nominated for all sorts of awards.
That is how badass this dude was. Stanley Kubrick was known for being extremely meticulous and never straying off script. This was the only guy that he let improvise and kept those improvisations in the movie.
Things go south from there because we find out, of course, that the old sheriff there is part of the Leatherface clan. The Hewitts in this movie, of course. Leatherface is Thomas Hewitt in this movie. Yeah, there's no dinner scene in this one. It's like the only one that doesn't have a dinner scene. So it's got that going for it.
Now, it makes me wonder, is this its own continuity, or is it kind of a similar continuity where on one side of Texas you have the Sawyers, on another side of Texas you have the Hewitts, and there are actually two Leatherfaces, just like in Japan.
I was actually thinking about that today because that's what I think about because I'm such a dork. I'm like, holy shit. There needs to be a Leatherface versus Leatherface movie. The Hewitts versus the Sawyers. Two depraved and degenerate families.
I want it.
Yes, make it happen. Yeah, at this point, you're not doing anything great with the series anyways. So, I mean, there's a movie that's supposed to be coming out this year. We'll get to that at the end. But I doubt it's going to be as good as a Leatherface versus Leatherface.
I will raise you. The Sawyers will have Nubbins, the corpse puppet. The Hewitts will have Arlie Ermy, the corpse puppet.
I like it. I like it.
I want that movie.
When I was watching this with a girlfriend, she really enjoyed it after it was all done. She enjoyed the fact she had a good point, as she often does. She can often spot a plot hole or two. But her main takeaway was that she really liked it because in this era of slasher movies and horror films, for the most part, they were all still in scream mode, like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Look how meta we are. Look how comical we are. Whereas this one is pretty dark and bleak the whole time, which was a huge departure from what was from your Screams and I Know What You Did Last Summers and Urban Legends at the time.
Not only that, I have to give them all kinds of kudos for doing their own thing. They weren't beholden to the original. They didn't have a dinner scene. They didn't have the red herring of the safe person at the local business that turns out to be part of the clan. Well, maybe they kind of did with the sheriff, but it still felt different. I gotta give them all kinds of respect for having the balls to do something different.
Yeah. In many ways, it could almost be like a continuation of the series. It could take place the next day after the original one if it weren't for the name changes and whatnot.
Absolutely.
I mean, it didn't even need to be a remake. The success of this actually led Platinum Dunes to also remake Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, which, people have opinions about.
I have those movies, but I don't think I've watched them since I bought them.
I have them as well. I watched the Nightmare on Elm Street one not too long ago, and I had waited years to see it because I heard nothing but bad things because obviously if Robert Englund isn't Freddy, then why watch it? But when I watched it, I actually enjoyed it quite a bit. I was very surprised by that. I don't think it's a great movie, but...
Yeah, but if you're going to get anybody to take over that role, you can't get much better than Jackie Earle Haley?
Yeah. And, I mean, originally what really turned me off on the movie was the makeup. I thought it was bad. But it didn't really bother me in that movie, I guess, when I watched it in action.
No, it makes sense from a burn victim's point of view.
Yeah. And the remake of Friday the 13th, I remember seeing that in the theater and thinking, much the same as this one, wow, this could be just a continuation of the series. It doesn't really rewrite the whole mythos or anything like that. This one, the one part that I remember from my time seeing it originally in the movie theater is about, I guess, a little before the halfway point in the movie where Aaron's boyfriend goes to the house and, of course, gets the Leatherface treatment. And Leatherface attacks Jessica Biel wearing her boyfriend's face. And I was like, that's fucked up. So I know we mentioned it before, but the remake of Texas Chainsaw, I mean, it's takes the formula of the original and does its own thing, and that's especially evident with the ending.
Yes. I kind of feel like they were setting themselves up for a sequel of some sort, but they didn't really take advantage of that.
No, they didn't. I thought, okay, so the one part of the movie that I didn't really like is when Jessica Biel chops off Leatherface's arm with a meat cleaver. I mean, come on.
I don't know if you really want to nitpick any of these movies for being realistic, though.
Oh, I'm picking nits on this one. I mean, she's like 98 pounds. It's really hard to use a meat cleaver to cut through bone. Trust me, I know. I've tried it just to back up my own theory. I rounded up a herd of hobo and I tried it out, and it's really hard to hack off a hobo's arm.
So what you're saying is it took you 6 whacks where it just took Jessica Biel 2.
Yeah, pretty much. And for that, I say bullshit. You know?
Well, again, you can't go looking too harshly on these movies for not being realistic.
Okay, I guess, Mr. Cool, Calm, and Collected, and Mr.
Well,
Calm
I mean,
and Rational.
If you're gonna do that, then you can't really accept the fact that the chainsaw doesn't get jammed with loose bits of meat.
He must put a lot of bar chain oil in that thing because it's always ready to go.
It goes through people in wheelchairs like it was butter.
I know. That's some kind of model he's got. The Saw's family, that's all I know.
Did I ever tell you about not to go on too much of a tangent, but did I ever tell you about the very, very early days of Couch Party and how I kind of creeped HAB out because we were talking about the movie Fargo?
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I remember watching this movie with my dad, and the old man just looks at me during the wood chipper scene. He's like, "Oh, that's unrealistic. If anything, that wood chipper would have gotten jammed about, shin deep when you show it." And HAB's just looking at me. He's like, "Why does your dad know this?"
Yeah, why does he?
Well, mainly because he is a big hunter and he processes his own game, and so he knows how things like that work. And I can't help but have some of this passed down on, to me, where I'll look at a movie like this and wonder why Leatherface is going straight for the gut because he's ruining all the meat in the chest cavity. Again, I grew up in a very big hunting community, and the worst place that you would ever want to shoot a deer is in the belly because you'll be needlessly killing a deer and not being able to use hardly any of it.
You're really a film scientist. You're like,
I am a pioneer when it comes to these things. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you're kind of like the Neil deGrasse Tyson of B movies. You're really, well, that's not going to happen, and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why Leatherface went wrong in this movie, see?
Well, another thing is Leatherface probably should have froze the bodies before breaking up the chainsaw for the same reason. Otherwise, the loose bits and pieces of Franklin would just, gum everything up.
Wow, you're really creeping me out, brother.
Sorry, I've helped my father process deer before.
Oh, man. Apparently. Yikes. I've never done that. I've never gutted an animal or any of that. I'm pretty sure I would puke all over the place.
It's one of those things that it's kind of like the people who live on farms can't smell the manure. You just get accustomed to it.
Oh, yeah. You get that glazed over look in your eye. That's how a Leatherface is born, Tomko.
That's true.
Yeah.
That is true. It's probably a good thing that I didn't have any kids then, I guess.
Sure. For the record, folks, no hobos were harmed in the making of this podcast. That was all a big joke, so don't report me to, I don't know, Hobos Anonymous, the group that's all about hobo welfare. Do you prefer the term hobo or bum, which is least offensive to you?
I'd say drifter.
Oh, drifter sounds BA.
Yeah.
I'd like to be a drifter.
A high plains drifter? Come on.
Yeah. I'm going to drift right on out of this movie into the next. As you said, it seemed like they were setting themselves up for a sequel, but no. They decided that's not the way we need to go. How are we going to have a movie with a one-armed Leatherface, for crying out loud? Hey, instead, why don't we do this? Why don't we do a prequel that nobody ever fucking wanted? How about that? Like as mentioned before, we've got to have Hannibal Rising, and we've got to have the show Hannibal, The Adventures of a Teenage Hannibal Lecter, and we've got to have Bates Motel, not the weird early 90s atrocity, but the series when Norman Bates was a small little baby boy. Is it really necessary?
No. And this movie does the same thing that all of those other projects you were talking about does. It explains a backstory, which in turn takes away all of the mystery and also makes it somehow a lot less scary.
Absolutely. It answers questions nobody had in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's like, did you really want to know how his uncle lost his legs?
No, nobody cares. That's what this movie does. It's a bunch of winks and nods. Oh, you saw that first movie in this series? Well, get a load of this. All the questions you never thought you had are going to be answered whether you wanted them to or not.
I don't know. I mean, this isn't the worst movie in the series by any stretch of the imagination, but it just reminds me of why most prequels don't really work for me. And that's because you know how the story is going to end. I mean, obviously, Leatherface and the rest of the family weren't going to be caught. Otherwise, how would you have the events of the original movie?
Mm-hmm.
So when they had the big shock ending, I'm assuming it was supposed to be a shock ending, where the main hero of the story dies at the very end. I wasn't shocked.
I wasn't really shocked either. I mean, what? She's not going to escape and tell people all about this weird cannibalistic family.
I didn't need to know why Leatherface wears other people's faces.
Right.
And I certainly didn't think it needed to be, something superficial. Like he doesn't have a nose, and so he hides behind other people.
Yeah, that really just takes away the power and the creepiness from it, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, not only that, but I found it a lot scarier when in the original movie he was wearing different faces to play different roles, which tells me that he doesn't have a personality of his own. You get the exact opposite. He does it because of vanity.
Yeah, that's exactly what this movie does. It takes that cool idea that he assumes the identity of whatever face he's wearing because he lacks any sort of identity of his own, and it just shit cans that. Any nuance is completely gone.
Now, having said that, I will say that Arlie Ermy is still so damn watchable in this movie.
Well, this movie is the Arlie Ermy show. It's almost his movie. I dare say that he's the main character in this movie and not Leatherface.
I think that's fair.
Pretty much all the events in the movie, all the character motivations, they're all a result of Arlie Ermy. And I guess if you land him in your movie, you might as well utilize him, right?
I mean, the guy was so damn entertaining. Even though this was dumb as fuck, I still had a good time watching him.
Yeah, it was dumb as fuck. I didn't hate it as much as I expected, really. Because I thought I was going to loathe this thing. But yeah, it wasn't.
There is a glowing review. Texas Chainsaw: The Beginning. I didn't loathe it.
Yeah, I didn't. I was entertained, but at the same time, I'm like, why am I watching? Why does this exist? I mean,
I think it's just because they kind of painted themselves into what they thought was a bit of a corner by having a one-armed Leatherface.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Which, I mean, you could have worked with that somehow. You could have had. The only thing I'm thinking is, like an Ash Williams route where he has an attached chainsaw.
I mean, that's so obvious. It's almost brilliant. Like,
exactly.
You had the answer right there, and you didn't utilize it. Wildstorm Comics at the time had the license to Texas Chainsaw, and I believe they ran with the one-arm Leatherface thing. He just had a fake like claw for an arm or something like that.
That works too.
Yeah. It's pretty lame compared to what you just said. I mean, it's so obvious. I can't believe they didn't just do that.
Well, shit, you could have also had, instead of a hook, you could have had a hammer.
Yeah, that would have been cool too, for sure.
Yeah. And then it would have been something different than Ash Williams.
Yeah. This one stars, as we said, Arlie Ermy, Jordana Brewster from, I guess, The Faculty and the Fast and Furious movies. Matt Bomer, who's an actor who's been around in things that you might recognize. And it starts with, we see a woman in 1939 giving birth prematurely on the job at a slaughterhouse. And of course, that's going to be our young Thomas Hewitt, aka Leatherface. The woman dies on the floor of the slaughterhouse, and the manager just takes the baby that was born and throws him in the dumpster outside.
It was the Depression years.
I mean, that's what you do.
Exactly.
In the Depression, I mean, women were just popping out babies all over. The streets were littered with babies just being popped out. I mean, that's why street sweepers were invented. I don't know if you know that. Get rid of all those babies. 30 years later, that little baby boy, after he was discovered in the dumpster, that little baby boy works in that same slaughterhouse, and he loves working there until the plant gets shut down by the health department. And that man gets real angry and finds a chainsaw. Get it? And kills the manager. So it's all on, Here we go. Here's our movie.
It was just too much of a coincidence. He was literally born in a slaughterhouse. And I don't know. I just keep thinking of the phrase that somebody used to describe Kevin Smith's movies, dumb but harmless. What else is there to say about this movie? I mean, it just felt like it was checking off things that happened that you may have wondered, but probably didn't. Like, how is Arlie Ermy this crazy cop? Well, turns out he's not.
Yeah, he killed the sheriff and just basically assumed the role.
And you know what? I got to give that Arlie Ermy all the credit in the world, because he somehow managed to get all of those bloodstains from that police officer's uniform.
You're Arlie Ermy. You've learned a trick or two in your time.
He shouted it out.
Yeah, he had to have. We also find out why the family eats all the folks. And it's something to do with him being in the army, Arlie Ermy, being in the army and, like, starving with his company. And, like, they voted on a person to be lunch because they couldn't starve. And now he's vowed his family will never starve again.
I don't know. Wouldn't it just be easier if you were desperate for money and were trying to figure out how to feed your family? Maybe commute to work, go to the next town over.
I mean, you live in Texas. It's cowboy land. There's got to be a cow farm somewhere. Just steal a cow. cow is a lot better on your teeth than some man named Steve, you know? I can't imagine
Yeah,
trying
Steve
to.
just kind of came across as being stringy, bit stringy.
I know. Imagine how you feel the next morning when you're trying to pass a Steve. It's just gross. You'd be in that bathroom all morning. Yeah, I don't know what else to say about this movie. It's just, it exists. It's here. It's not the worst thing ever.
I can kind of see why Michael Bay gave up after this one, though.
Yeah, and it's a shame because the first remake had so much promise.
Mm-hmm.
And it was completely squandered on this one.
Well, I think another problem is that I myself went into the remake with no expectations, kind of almost expecting to hate it, and was very pleasantly surprised. And I had the exact opposite happen with this one. Based on the performance of that remake, I was expecting way better than this, and the fact that they gave us what they did just kind of stung that much more, I guess.
Yeah. For the record, at the 27th Golden Raspberry Awards, the film was nominated for Worst Prequel or Sequel, but it lost, believe it or not, to Basic Instinct 2. We've got nowhere else to go but 3D, brother.
Oh boy. And you know what's really frustrating is that the first 5-10 minutes, I really enjoyed what they did. This is arguably the best set design that I've seen since the original one because they got so many little details right about that house.
Yes. So,
It starts out like what, an hour or so after the original one ended.
yes. Yeah.
And yeah, it was kind of weird to see all these extra family members that came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that
appear.
was super odd. Like all of us. So it takes place after Sally Hardest Day escapes and this lynch mob comes to the Sawyer house to deliver their own form of justice. Yeah. And I mean, we've seen the original Texas Chainsaw. There was only like 3-4 family members. Well, in this, all of a sudden, there's a bunch of fat hillbillies that must have been just hanging out back or something. But they're in the house now, and they've got shotguns and whatnot. The nice touch is we have good old Bill Moseley coming back, but he's playing the cook this time, which I like.
Which, I mean, can you think of anybody better to play that role?
Pretty amazing. We have Leatherface, who's all upset. The one thing that really ticks me off about this opening scene is that mask that Leatherface is wearing is fucking god awful.
Yeah, but it did the job that it was trying to set out to do. You could clearly see that it was the same design as what was shown at the end of the original movie.
Sure, but I'm sorry if the mask from 40 years earlier looks better than the mask you designed for this movie in 2013, something's wrong.
I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, it's just awful.
Now, another thing that's actually I at least appreciated is you finally get to see Gunnar Hansen in another Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie at this point.
Yeah.
Granted, he dies almost right away. And the same thing for the actor that played the grandfather in the original. He reprised his role and somehow managed to look younger.
The lynch mob actually succeeds and shoots up the house, pretty much killing everybody and setting it on fire. I say pretty much killing everybody because, of course, Leatherface doesn't die. And a young woman with her small baby girl also escaped.
Now, I had a hard time with this. Are they saying that because Leatherface hid behind that steel door, that's the reason why he survived the fire? Because that doesn't make much sense then, at least not more sense than, well, he just survived. Because they have to say that entire room is fireproof somehow. Not to mention he didn't have to worry about smoke inhalation or anything like that. And you remember how I said you can't look at these movies and expect logic?
Yeah,
this is why.
Just small details, I mean, So this woman escapes with this, her baby girl when the town Hicks sees her, kills her, takes the baby for his own to give to his wife because she always wanted a child. And we're off to the races on this one.
Now, do we want to talk about the amount of years that are supposed to be passing?
Yeah, I'd love for you to talk about this because the timeline makes zero sense.
The bulk of this movie takes place in what I was assuming was a contemporary year. 20. What year did this come out? 2012.
It was filmed in 2012, came out 2013. Yeah.
All right, so it's roughly 39 to 40 years past the original movie's release.
Yep.
They're saying that this girl who is clearly walking around in modern day America using modern day technology was born in an infant in 1973.
Yeah.
But she doesn't look much older than early 20s.
Yeah. It's she's played by Alexandra Daddario, who's been in movies. Most famously, probably the first season of True Detective, where she has a "Hey Girl, Hey" scene with good old Woody Harrelson.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And if you look at her, if you've seen her, if you know who she is, she doesn't look like she's some middle-aged woman.
No.
And that's a problem. Also, all of her friends are not middle-aged. She hangs out with Trey Songz, who's a singer of some repute. And Tanya Ramond, who was Malcolm in the Middle's crush, and also on Lost. So that's a thing.
Mm. Yeah, it was kind of weird seeing her in this movie just because I still only think of her as the nerdy girl from Malcolm in the Middle.
Oh, she's full out sex bomb in this one, though.
Yes, she is.
He's slutting it all over the place. So in the future, Alexandra Daddario gets a notice that her grandmother that she never knew passed away, and she inherits this big, big house. And of course, old man Leatherface lives in the basement. Because where else would he live?
Yeah, I don't see him, in some condo in Miami.
Yeah. So apparently, he's just been living down there the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Wearing his mask and festering and getting old and supposedly not killing anything, which, I mean, he's probably jonesing for some murdering, I would say.
Now, I got to give this movie one little bit of credit. It was kind of interesting to see an aged Leatherface, even if it didn't make a lot of sense. Just for the same reason why I thought it was kind of neat that last Halloween movie naturally aged all the characters.
Yeah.
But they didn't really do a whole lot with it in this movie.
No. It's like the most recent Halloween saw this movie, took that idea and made it 15 times better.
Exactly. Yeah.
This movie's stupid too. This is so dumb, this movie. At one point, old man Leatherface.
I'm not sure if this is the worst one.
It's got to be close.
It's got to be.
It's not the worst one. It's probably the second worst. We're going to get to the worst one in a minute, I think. At one point, old man Leatherface chases Alexandra Daddario through a crowded carnival. It's the dumbest scene. He's been a recluse for 40 years or whatever. He runs through a carnival with hundreds of people with a murdering chainsaw, and nobody says anything. Nobody even reacts.
Well, it happens all the time down in Texas, apparently.
Apparently. That's what they do. They just have chainsaw duels in the street in Texas.
I would actually challenge you on this one. I would say that that's not the dumbest scene in this movie. I would give that distinction to the escape that the young people try to, go through with in the van, where they come across a locked gate. Now, clearly, we know that the main character knows the combination to open the gate. Rather than getting out, pushing 4 buttons, and letting the gate open, they decide to ram it. And it's not like they didn't have time to actually manually open it, because Leatherface is on foot. They're in a goddamn van. So they proceed to ram the van, and of course they get. I'm pretty sure they at least get themselves injured. They completely disable the van, and then they allow Leatherface to catch up to them. That to me is the dumbest part of this entire movie.
Which is hard to do because he's like a spry 76 years old, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And he limps around because he's really selling that injury from the first movie where the chainsaw falls on his leg. My only thing is that Trey Songz, who was Alexander Daddario's boyfriend in the movie, he was in a post-coital haze because on account of the fact that he's a cheated, no good son of a bitch. Because he just got done.
Aren't they all?
Well, what do you mean by they? I feel scared. We're going to get canceled.
All men. All men.
Thank you for clarifying. He just got done banging her best friend and in the stables, of course, So he wasn't thinking clearly, obviously.
No, I don't know. I mean, I'm not even sure what they tried to achieve with this movie, because say what you will about Texas Chainsaw at the beginning, at least they seem to have a purpose. This movie just seemed to. They were cashing in on the fad of 3D movies probably 5 years too late. They didn't have much of a story, and they didn't really have any good special effects to really brag about.
Nope.
This movie has no purpose.
Zero. It has a cringe-worthy line at the end of the movie where Alexander Daddario throws Leatherface his chainsaw.
Yep.
And says, "Get him."
Oh, you forgot. You forgot. I guess they had a face turn for Leatherface, where all of a sudden, when they realize they're related, they decide that they need to team up.
Yeah.
And save the town from the corrupt mayor who helped the lynch mob burn down the original house.
Yep. So she tosses him the chainsaw and says, "Get him, cuz.
Do your thing, yeah."
And he murders the people, the mayor. And we get to your meat grinder scene or your wood chipper scene or whatever.
Yeah, with some of the worst CG I think I've ever seen.
The worst CG blood splatter ever. Yeah, and it all of a sudden Leatherface is a hero. He's a good guy. That's not what you're supposed to do.
No. I have a real hard time accepting the fact that we're supposed to sympathize with Leatherface.
Right. That seems like the last thing you would want this movie to do. Now all of a sudden he's big cuddly grandpa father figure. What? Mm-hmm. Get out of here. I mean, the only thing what they should have done as I rewrite this movie is that the Heather character should have picked up the chainsaw and murdered the mayor herself. And then do the Leatherface chainsaw shuffle like he always did. And then she becomes the next Leatherface. Cut to the next scene and she's wearing the mayor's face. There we go.
Okay, yeah. That's an immediately better ending.
That would make sense. So then the movie ends with them living together. Heather upstairs, Leatherface, that good-for-nothing son, still living in his parents' basement, not doing anything with his life. That goddamn slacker.
You know what? I think I would watch this if it was a sitcom based on that premise alone.
Yes.
Leatherface as the wacky neighbor.
Yeah. He could be the Kramer role in Seinfeld, but bust through the door with his chainsaw every time. Leatherface, I just got a new door.
Make this film, Kim Hinkle.
Yes.
It's not like you have anything better to do.
No. Yeah, that's what it needs to be. A Texas Chainsaw situation comedy. God.
I would watch that. I'm not lying. I'm not being facetious at all. I would watch the hell out of that.
The franchise has already been dragged through the mud, so why not?
Exactly. Put it on Adult Swim. It'll sell like hotcakes.
Oh, especially on Adult Swim.
Mm-hmm.
So many stoned out of their mind college kids watching. Jesus. I guess the last thing to mention is Scott Eastwood, son of Clint, is the young, hot police officer in town. But
which, I mean, is anybody really shocked to find out that he was a bad guy in this movie?
The other thing I really liked about this movie is learning the fact that Jimmy Crack Corn on vinyl is Face's jam. He was just jamming in his torture dungeon to Jimmy Crack Corn on vinyl. It was great. What a dumb movie.
Yeah. I mean, say what you will about Texas Chainsaw, the Next Generation. At least that was fun in a campy way.
Mm-hmm.
This is just stupid. So that brings us to Leatherface.
This brings us to Leatherface from 2017. It's a prequel. What? You say? We already had a prequel. Oh, yes, but this is the prequel to the prequel to the prequel. What? Oh, no, we completely erased continuity again. Say what? Yeah, I don't know either.
Well, not only that, but it didn't even get the characters right in this movie.
The characters are all wrong. This is like the CW version of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That's all I could think about. That's all I could think about when I was watching this. Oh, look at all these young, hot teens with their drama and their sexual tension. Yes, Leatherface in this movie is a young, hot teen. What? Get out of here. I mean...
Well, not only that, but they really kind of fucked up the character of the cook.
Oh, they did right off the bat.
Yes. The cook is not supposed to enjoy actually killing people. He flat out said he never had a stomach for it. In this movie, he's killing motherfuckers any chance he gets.
And he loves it. He's laughing the whole time.
That and the hitchhiker is this chubby little kid, which, okay, that doesn't make any sense, but I'll roll with it, movie.
Yeah. I mean, so again, we're using the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre as our touchstone and going from there, which, okay. You can't mess with the original. It's a classic. It's great. But again, we get the origin story of Leatherface that we never needed or wanted. And it's even stupider than Texas Chainsaw the beginning. I didn't think it was possible.
In all fairness, I would not be shocked if this movie did not start out as an entry into this franchise. I kind of get the feeling that this was some young adult movie that was a combination slasher movie road trip. And it had, I'm willing to bet when it was first thought of, it had nothing to do with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Leatherface, none of the characters. But the rewrites, you could tell, were just slapdash in order to get funding when it found they decided to, make it into that franchise. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. Like, it could be a completely different franchise. It honestly could be.
And honestly, I think it would have been a better movie if it was.
Probably. Yeah, it would.
Because you would be able to go into it without any kind of expectations. You could go into it without having to make the logic jumps in your head to make the continuity fit. It would have been a much better movie if it wasn't connected to this franchise at all.
So the movie starts out with a couple named Betty Hartman and Ted Hardesty. Yeah, that's right. Some sort of relative to Sally, of course, because we got to wink and nod our asses off, right? They see a wounded child in the road, and they go to help this child, and then they get murdered straight to death. Oh, it's because that little boy is a young baby Leatherface.
And luring them into a trap.
Of course.
Which was sprung by the chef.
Eventually, young Jedediah, who's going to be our Leatherface, is taken into a foster home where the children are taken away from their dangerous families in the hopes they can be rehabilitated. There's a big...
And not only that, but given new identities.
Yeah. You got to erase all connection to their past, right? That's so we can have a plot twist, you see? Because in this place, we have a big, dumb, nonverbal mountain of a man. Yeah.
Yes.
He seems to be really simple. He's kind of
prone to violence.
Prone to violence.
Lumbering.
Yeah. We have a sexy hot nurse that's there. It's like her first job, and she's got to be cute the whole time because, of course, she does. And then we have a young heartthrob named Jackson, who she's kind of taking a shine to because, goddamn, those hormones, they be crazy. Eventually, two psychos in the place cause a riot. Nurses are killed. Patients are killed. The psychos take young hot nurse hostage after Jackson saves her. The big dumb oaf comes with them. It's a big road trip. Oh, man, it's so nuts, this movie. Plot twist. The big dumb oaf is not Jedediah Sawyer. It's the young heartthrob Jackson. Oh, my God. How clever. How many times when you were watching this did you want to turn it off?
Pretty much the entire way through. This one was a really tough watch just because, again, it does not feel like it belongs in this franchise.
No.
It took me probably 3 attempts to make it through this movie.
Yeah. I had to watch it in bits and pieces. We get the origin of Leatherface. He's escaping with young hot nurse from the police because Jackson snapped at some point and killed a police officer because the police officer killed the big dumb oaf. And as they're escaping, a gunshot takes off the bottom part of his face. Well, not really. He has
I was going to say, it goes in one cheek and out the other, it looked like.
He has a real cool Heath Ledger Joker smile now.
Mm-hmm.
And now he has to wear faces of others. That's
why? Because so basically they're saying Leatherface is like Dr. Doom.
Right.
Just to cover up his scar.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Stupid.
I love the fact that it's exactly a Heath Ledger Joker smile.
Yes.
I'm like, are you serious?
This movie it was not known for.
Yeah. So eventually, of course, Jackson embraces his name as Jedediah Sawyer and becomes a psychopath and even kills Vince.
Again, it's what I was saying about why I don't like prequels. You know how it's going to end.
Yeah. His crazy mother convinces him to hunt down young hot nurse. And of course, the chase happens in the woods because, of course, and she gets caught in a bear trap. And she was like, oh, no, don't do it. Remember all that sex we had and the love we shared? And remember how hot I am? And he's like, no way. And decapitates her.
Only because, she made fun of his mama.
Well, and you don't do that, do you?
He was listening to her up until that point.
Yeah. It wasn't even a good "your mama so" joke either. That's why. Honestly, my favorite part of this movie is the very ending. It's the one thing I feel like they got right. We see Jedediah taking two faces. Elizabeth and the cop, played by Stephen Dorff. He sews them together and makes a really creepy mask. And the bottom half of the face is the nurse's face. And we see him put the mask on, look in the mirror, and put lipstick on his face. I'm like, that's the one part of the movie that understands the character. And then the movie ends with him smashing the mirror as he sees his reflection.
I would agree with you, except they don't understand that Leatherface isn't a pencil neck geek.
Well, yeah, that too.
I don't know. I feel like I'm personally being too hard on this movie because...
No, I don't think you are. I don't think you're being hard enough.
I don't know. I mean, I keep thinking to myself, if this had absolutely nothing to do with the franchise it's saying it does, it would have been a better experience. But as it is, they're just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. It's just an empty experience. I don't know why it's even... I think you can watch it on HBO Max right now. So
I'm not sure. In fact, I know that it debuted on Dish Network. It did it even make it to straight to DVD status.
Oh man, that's awful. That's even worse than straight to DVD. That's no man's land.
It's because they didn't want to pay for the manufacturing costs of the discs and the shipping of the discs.
Oh God. Well, I guess all hope isn't lost. The year is 2021 as we record this, and allegedly, supposedly, there's a Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out this year. And it's going to be a direct sequel to the 1974 movie. And this one will feature, stop me if you've heard this before, Old Man Leatherface. Because we tried it once. Let's try that fucker again. You know? Now, the only thing that this one has going for it is Fede Alvarez is producing. He did the Evil Dead remake in 2013, which I kind of like. And he did Don't Breathe in 2016, which I like quite a bit. So maybe. However, they did do a test screening of this in March. No, I think it was in May. And it did not go well. The audience did not like, which makes me just...
Didn't they fire the director halfway through?
Yeah, they've been...
And then had to reshoot everything?
Yeah, they've been having all sorts of problems. Which doesn't bode well.
I don't know. I mean, I'll give it a chance, but...
For sure, yeah.
My hopes are not high with this.
It's crazy to me that all these movies just want to be like, oh, there's a 1974 film. Now here's one in the present day that's connected to this. Why don't you just make a movie? Why don't you just make a fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie? Could you do that? Set it in 1976. Okay? It doesn't matter if it's in the present day. Nobody cares. Just make a good horror movie. Put bell bottoms on the leads and go. That's all you need. I mean, I don't want to
say what you will about the remake, but they did show that audiences are willing to accept the idea of a period piece horror movie.
Absolutely. I mean, they didn't set that. They easily could have set that in 2003. There was no reason to set it in 1974, but it worked. So just do it. I just don't understand why you have these iconic characters and you can't do anything with them ever.
Well, I think at the end of the day, this was not meant to be an endless franchise the way that the Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th movies are. But, you know, they had this movie that had an amazing impact on audiences, and so the studios wanted to try to exploit it, and it's just, they're trying to milk a cow that has absolutely no udders.
Wow, that's an analogy. I like that.
It was never meant to be, what, 10 movies, 9 movies long,
Let's
counting this new
see.
one.
7, 8. Yeah, the one coming out this year would make it 9, yeah.
Yeah, it was never meant to be like this. And I think I'd rather see another remake than another sequel. And if they wanted to set the remake in present day Texas, okay, I'd be willing to work with that.
Yeah. I mean the character of Leatherface, it hasn't gone away. There's a new Funko Pop of Leatherface that just came out. He in 2015, he was a downloadable character for the fighting game Mortal Kombat X, for crying out loud. And he was also featured in the 2016 horror game Dead by Daylight. He hasn't left the pop culture consciousness. I just hope we get another decent movie at some point in my lifetime.
You know what? Even if we don't, it's not that big a deal. We will always have that original movie.
That's true. I'm going to rank them right now. Texas Chainsaw 1, Texas Chainsaw 2. This is in order of best to worst, in my opinion. So we got 1, 2.
Yeah, and then you have a big drop off.
We have a big drop off. We have 1, 2. Then we have the remake in 2003. And then we have, I hate to say it, but Texas Chainsaw the beginning, I think. And then Leatherface, which is Texas Chainsaw 3. And then we have Texas Chainsaw 3D, followed by, finally, Leatherface 2017.
You know what? I think I would keep that same list, except I would flip-flop the last two. Because at least Leatherface at one point had potential, whereas Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3D was just stillborn. It was just dumb right out of the gate.
Yeah. I mean, 3D movies were making a comeback, especially horror slasher 3D movies in that time. So, in
all fairness, trying to, find out which movie is dumber is really splitting hairs with those two.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Oh, no, I forgot the Next Generation completely. Where did I put that? I would probably put that on my list after Texas Chainsaw 2003, simply because it's so batshit insane that it's entertaining.
Exactly. I don't think that was a movie that was meant to be taken seriously in any way, shape, or form.
I mean, Matthew McConaughey's appearance or performance alone is just, and
it's worth the price of admission. Yes,
and taking the character of Leatherface and delivering something completely different with the character is worth it too. Also, I should mention that the character of Leatherface is featured in a movie called Death House. Have you heard of this?
No.
Death House is a movie in which the protagonist is thrown inside a house of death, I guess. By the looks of it, I don't know. It's extremely low budget, but it was written by Gunnar Hansen.
Okay.
And the cast includes Kane Hodder, Bill Moseley.
You have my attention.
Dee Wallace, Tony Todd, Camille Keaton. So we got Jason, we've got Chop Top, we've got Candyman. Camille Keaton was I Spit on Your Grave. We got a bunch of horror legends here. Adrienne Barbeau's in it. Sid Haig.
Damn.
Lloyd Kaufman makes an appearance. Melissa Rose, yeah, Angela herself is in it. So the Death House is a prison where prisoners are confined to virtual environments and blah, blah, blah. But anyways, there's a character that's in the house identified as Leatherface, played by actress Debbie Rochon, and Leatherface is a woman in this version, which is interesting. I tried to track it down. I couldn't find it. I wanted to see it, but I did not. That's all I know.
Surprised it's not on Prime or anything like that.
I think it was at one time, but
All right. So, would you even recommend folks repeating this little experiment, sir? Honestly,
I mean, if you're a film aficionado and into horror movies, yes. If you're a casual fan, no. The obviously Texas Chainsaw the original is a classic. I would watch that. I think people would enjoy the second one for the dark humor. And the remake is just a pretty good, entertaining movie, too. The rest of them, I think, is just for the diehards. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's fair, but even the diehards have to have their line.
Right.
So, all right. What else is there to say about this other than, peaks and valleys?
Peaks and valleys. I should also mention one more thing. There is a movie that pops up on Tubi every time I watch some garbage on Tubi called Spanish Chainsaw Massacre. So
Really?
yeah. Came out in 2017. I have no idea. It's probably the worst thing ever. So if somebody wants to watch that for me so I don't have to, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
I suppose you should mention that there are actually a lot of pretty decent documentaries surrounding this franchise on YouTube.
Yeah. And on Tubi as
One
well.
is called A Family Portrait, I think.
Yeah. And The Shocking Truth is another one, I think.
Mm-hmm. Again, that original movie, the stories about the behind the scenes shenanigans are just as entertaining as what was on screen.
Yeah, there's also a documentary out there called The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the documentary. That was the original title of Texas Chainsaw The Next Generation.
Mm-hmm.
So it just details the making of, and I don't know, I didn't have time to track it down, but it might be interesting just to see, I don't know, hear the filmmakers talk about working with the young Renee Zellweger and Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They tried, at least.
They tried. We tried too, to entertain your asses. Hope you enjoyed. Tomko, where can the folks find you?
You can find me on a little show called Jake and Tom Conquer the Group. I'm actually almost done editing our newest show, which should be out this Sunday. We team up with Ro from Project Archivist to bring you all kinds of stories, and we call it This Year in Fecal Matter.
Perfect.
I'll let you figure out what that means, but it shouldn't be too hard to, deduce.
Awesome. I just got done editing a brand spanking new episode of Miserable Retail Slave, a Big Dun comedy show. We had special guest Dennis from the Dennis Show and Pro Wrestling Intoxicated on. It was a great time. Dennis is a longtime listener of the show, and I've known him for years on Twitter. This is the first time we ever spoke, so that was a treat. It was a fun episode, so hopefully folks enjoy that. You can find me on mretailslave on that twitter.com. Join their Facebook group, Miserable Retail Slave. This podcast has a Facebook page you can like if you so choose. Just search someone's favorite movie. Coming up on this program, we still have a listener request to get through for Fade to Black. Excited for that?
Looking forward to that.
Excellent.
That and the other thing we got to tackle is the carnival.
The amusement park.
The amusement park. Sorry. Yes, sir.
Yes. Yeah. I think we'll tackle both at once, actually, or in the same episode, because the amusement park is pretty short. So not sure.
All right. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And after that, I don't know. I'm thinking of having a summer theme to the show. So think beaches and warm locations and weird, wild cinema that may take place in those places. Eh?
Ooh.
Ooh.
All right. So I just want to say thanks for listening. We'll talk to you guys next time then, okay?
We really need a sign off for this podcast, don't we?
We do.
Jeez.
Yes.
I was just thinking that. I'm like, damn, I don't have. It's so awkward AF to end this. Like, what do I even say? Oh, I should give a special shout out to Brandon Chapman for the episode artwork for the Texas Chainsaw episodes.
Yes, it is gorgeous.
Yeah. So thanks a lot for that. Really cool. As Tomko said, we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.